Appreciate everybody for joining us here live on, you know what this is, of course, like I always say, unless you've been living under a rock, the official Atlanta Hawks postcast show where we saw the Atlanta Hawks fall. Unfortunately, I know there's a lot of optimism, a lot of positivity. Of course, we're going to talk quite a bit about that. 140 to 129 on the road. No shocker, probably to anybody that they were able to hang around with the reigning defending world champions tonight. Why is it not a shocker? Well, because they played away from State Farm Arena. That's why. Of course. So I appreciate everybody for joining me. DeShaun Tate, as you know it, unfortunately don't have Tanitra, but we're going to roll on as we typically do. Not before we let everybody know that today's episode of the Atlanta Hawks postcast is brought to you by FanDuel, where before tip off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA happy hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Make sure that everybody goes and check out FanDuel. Make sure that you go on to there and place those bets in, get your rent paid, try and put a couple extra dollars back into your pocket after all that Christmas shopping for the little ones and the loved ones and so on and so forth. Happy belated holidays to everybody. And as we get ready to approach the new year, I'd be really interested to know what some of you would like to see from our Atlanta Hawks during the new year. So a lot more of this type of basketball is something we could all certainly get used to. And I think, just for starters, as we open up things here, talking a little bit about the house money that has been made in this first segment it's the obvious. And of course, I want to know what people have learned, but it was the obvious. There's some positivity here. There's some optimism. There was a lot of talk about the family feud between Keaton Wallace and Cason Wallace and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and that kind of battle and matchup. And I think that it was really smart out the gate, just from the jump with the matchups. We know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a guy who's going to be really tough, a tough battle and a tough challenge to try to overcome, especially on the road. Heck, anywhere at State Farm Arena, at Paycom Center, on the moon, doesn't matter. In the living room, doesn't make a difference. Going to be a tough battle, but who else to try to put on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander than probably somebody in the NBA that probably knows him better than anybody else possibly could, that being Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And obviously we having conversations about this game being played without Trae Young and Jalen and Jalen Johnson. So you try to play with the house money and do the best that you can and make the best out of any of the situation that you possibly can, and really just put yourself in position to really just try to compete when you're without both of those guys. And those aren't just any two guys. They're your top assist leaders on this team to distribute and facilitate the basketball, which is essentially what the quarterback on the quarterback of the team. That's the job, that's the role, that's the duties, that's the responsibilities, right? And then when you start talking about the matchups again, the dynamic athlete and basketball player that Jalen Williams is, you put Dyson Daniels on them and you try to mix things up the best that you possibly can to try and make things as difficult. I think that's the plan going in. You try to make things as difficult for them as you possibly can. Not going to be able to stop them. We all understand. We all understand that. But the plan, obviously, is to try and contain those guys. And so when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who now goes from 103 to 104 consecutive games with 20-plus points, which I thought was a really interesting stat. The second longest tally of such record in NBA history, with number one being Wilt Chamberlain. That's a hell of a company to be in. But nonetheless, a damn good performance by the Atlanta Hawks, showing some effort, showing some will, showing some grit, some determination. And I thought that they had in order to win this game, which we all could probably agree would be really hard fetched and be really hard pressed to find anybody that think that the Hawks was actually going to win this game. Of course, you give them a chance because the mentality is, well, they got to put their shorts on one leg at a time, the same way that we do, and get off the bus the same way we do. Outside of that fact, the reality is what it is and what you're going up against. And you got to give them a hand clap. You got to tip your cap. You got to give them a lot of credit for what they were able to do tonight, showing the effort, showing the determination, showing some grit, and a lot of the same similar I guess just mentality that I think that they had to approach. They had to go into similar to when they played the New York Knicks just a couple of nights ago, to play loose, to play physical, try and match the intensity. Obviously, got the underdog role, playing with house money, but protect the basketball. Didn't necessarily love the fact that they had about 16 turnovers, but that's going to happen when you're playing, if not the best, then one of the best defensive teams in the entire NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, they're rolling, they're ticked off right now. What did they lose? I think they're 2-4 in their last 6 approaching this game. 3 losses against San Antonio, 1 against Minnesota. They're not about to let the Atlanta Hawks come in there and beat them, but I'm almost kind of thinking, like, was this the worst time to play Oklahoma City because of what just transpired with what I just listed off, 2-4 in the last 6? Or was that the worst time, or was that the best time, because we haven't seen OKC look this vulnerable, if you will, quote unquote, all season long? Now, granted, the Atlanta Hawks ain't rolling out there Victor Wembanyama. They're also not rolling out there Anthony Edwards either. So I get it from that standpoint. They couldn't even roll out there Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. And of course, I have to mention nor Kristaps Porzingis, again, whole different conversation. But nonetheless, it's still the 7th loss in a row. And I'm not sure how much better it's going to get getting ready to play up against a Toronto team in back-to-back games, where I think Toronto has beat them twice already. So definitely need to find some kind of positivity and optimism out of it. I think they got a little bit here on tonight. And what did we really learn from this Hawks team? Like, what are we really getting out of this? I still don't think that they're a team with an identity, but I do believe that they are a team that plays well with the house money, but playing well isn't going to cut it. If you are, at some point you have to add a number to the left side of the result column. Now, let's just talk about what we know everybody likes to do, right? Let's skip behind all the gibberish. Everybody's going to go out there after tonight, like they've been doing for the last 5 and 6 games, or prior to the last 5 or 6 games, excuse me, but like tonight, and talk about how much better this team is without Trae Young, right? Because I know that that's just the reality. Like, that, people don't want to talk about it. People want to fluff. People want to dance around it and do all that. But the reality is that everybody wants to talk about, and yeah, I get it, amid trade rumors. I've been seeing the same stuff that you guys have been seeing, trust me, as of the last 24 hours. Same thing with Zachary Reese-Shea and the whole 9. And we can have that conversation, or we can not have it. We can save it for another day. But the reality is that's going to be a lot of the conversation is about how much better this team is defensively, ball movement, spreading the floor, shot selection, all sorts of other stuff when Trae Young is not on the floor. I'm not buying it for 1 minute, but I do understand why people may think the way they think to a degree, feel the way that they feel, because the outcomes have been what the outcomes have been. You move Nickeil Alexander-Walker back into the starting lineup again, obviously, because you're without guys, and he looks like DeJounte Murray. That's just what it is. Trae goes down. Somebody has to lead the team to wield them to a victory, or get as close as they can to it, at least be competitive in the process. And that guy has been Nickeil Alexander-Walker, doing a fine job at it, playing both sides of the basketball, defensively and offensively, look really great, outstanding at doing it. Some of his best career numbers coming this year. I understand all of that, but I just think that narrative around Trae, since people love to talk about it and want to address it, I think that narrative is getting a little bit old, to a degree, right? Because that's what we're gonna hear. What we're not gonna hear is because of this exact same scenario, because of this exact same situation, where this is a team that went out there and competed without Trae. This is a team that also went out there and competed without Jalen Johnson. What we're not going to end up hearing is how much better this team appeared to have looked without Jalen Johnson. Also, we're just going to hear about how much better it looked without Trae. In the event that this team came away with a win, people would talk about how they can win without Trae. You wouldn't really hear as much about Jalen Johnson. You're not going to hear as much about the loss without Jalen Johnson either. Everything's just going to be centered around Trae. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's sad. There it is. Got it out the way. All done. I think a really interesting matchup in battle between two guys. Number one steals leader in the NBA being Cason Wallace, matching up with Dyson Daniels. Really good defense. Probably couldn't tell by 140 and 129 points being scored on tonight, but that's basketball. Me, myself, personally, I can live with a team that is better than me on paper, better than me on the floor, and just more talented all across the board. However, what I can't live with, and this is why I'm okay with the way that the performance of was of the Hawks tonight, where I think they definitely played a grade A game. Was it the best in that they've played all season long? Probably. If it wasn't, it's definitely up there amongst those that have been the best games that have been played all season long. But if you compete and put yourself in position to where you at least give yourself a chance, I think that that's good. It doesn't help that they shot 71% from the free throw line. That could have helped them win a basketball game. 10 fast break points could have helped them win a basketball game, but we already talked about OKC and how stout that their defense is. Defensive anchors hanging their hat on that side of the basketball. That's just what they do. 36 points in the paint, not the worst thing in the world, but we know that that's not typically like the Atlanta Hawks. When you don't have Kristaps Porzingis, you're playing so many guys out of position. In some instances, Mohamed Gay is still out there playing the center / power forward role. They're just not beefy enough. You have an Asa Newell rookie who is in the front court and pretty much essentially just not going to be the beef in the middle, nor to bring along the experience that you need him to do so. So great job, especially in the first quarter. Great job, especially in the first half. We saw 2 buzzer beaters, one by Dyson Daniels, another by Nickeil Alexander-Walker to close out the first and the second quarter. And how about this? If you need some more positivity, the Oklahoma City Thunder just allowed the most 3-point conversions given up all season by a team. That's 25 for the Atlanta Hawks. We know that Quinn Snyder mentioned how he just really wanted to let it rip, getting up to about 50 plus 3-point attempts on tonight. They did a little bit more than that. I believe they got close to about 54. They really needed some big time shooting from Veet, Onyeka, Dyson, Luke Kennard for once, for crying out loud, Asa Newell, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Zachary Reese-Shea. They shot 22 for 50, which isn't the worst, and that's what ultimately kind of kept them in the game. So run all the actions through Nickeil Alexander-Walker and just trying to live with controlling the controllables upon what you can actually do to come away with adding a number to the left side of the result column. We're going to be right back. We're going to pay some bills real quick, talk a little bit about how the Atlanta Hawks gave themselves a chance. Well, I guess until they didn't in the turning point. That's going to be coming up here on the other side of the break. This episode of the Atlanta Hawks Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. And Fridays, I guess even Mondays, especially Fridays, already feel different during the basketball season. Yes, who doesn't love basketball season? Nobody more than this guy. And FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a brand new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. So you guys want to make sure you're taking advantage of all these really awesome opportunities. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern time, of course, have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boost bonuses, and surprises. It's also easy to check the weekly special before tip off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend starts, of course. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. It's the best time of the week. Best day of the week, no questions asked. People love Saturday. I love Fridays. Why? It's closer to the weekend. It's the very beginning of it all. One of my favorite movies being Friday already as it is for special reason. Why? Because of this exact reason right here. All of these really super awesome offers. FanDuel just intensified it for me. So before tip off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, remember a little bit of basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Back with you guys here just for a little while longer. And appreciate everybody for not only joining us now here live, where you can hear me. We're talking about the Atlanta Hawks 140 to 129 loss to the reigning national world champions, Oklahoma City Thunder on the road. Seven consecutive losses now and counting for the Atlanta Hawks. However, I would be remiss if I did not mention I appreciate everybody that's going to join us later on and for making us the number one, your number one option for your sports podcast needs. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the love on that as well. And the Atlanta Hawks gave themselves a chance throughout the course of this night, throughout the duration. They hung in there. They fought tooth and toenail. They refused to lose. And that's what we love to see until they didn't. And that, my friends, is the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So the part of this game where I really do believe that the Atlanta Hawks kind of took themselves out of position to actually be able to win it is because I felt like they really couldn't afford to go down by double digits, not once, but twice. The first time, obviously, being on a 12-0 run for the Oklahoma City Thunder to start the third quarter. I think the Atlanta Hawks were leading by 4, if I'm not mistaken, at the half, 74 to 70, which was an outstanding feat. I'm not sure anybody would have probably guessed that, but nonetheless, you know, finding a way, I guess, if you put a little bit of tokens on the first half, if you're into that sort of thing, betting and so forth, then you probably made a little bit of money with the Atlanta Hawks tonight. They chip in one extra point coming out of the break, and of course, there goes the run made by Oklahoma City Thunder. And the way that they did it wasn't what they did. It was more so about how they did it. And that's just been the MO and the reputation of the Oklahoma City Thunder since the beginning of time. We can remember when they start formulating this team, the combination, the group efforts, typical OKC efforts where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was tipping in a little bit. Lou Dort got a couple shots off as well. Jay Will, I think, had a turnaround jump shot, I believe. And then even Chet Holmgren even had a layup. No dunks, not many three-pointers en route to their 12-0 run, but a lot of easier twos, making their money easily, finding a way to be able to be efficient, get high percentage shots, not making life difficult amongst themselves, playing with high energy, and obviously also getting some stops. So I think those were things that were important. And you got to give the Hawks some credit because they found a way to come back in this game after being down by double digits. So that's where I kind of thought, it's probably about to start getting ugly. But the Hawks showed some grit, and they showed some motivation, some aspiration, and some determination. They trailed by 10 points at the end of the third quarter. They turned that into a run where they're down by 4 after an Asa Newell free throw conversion. And then as soon as OKC tried to go on a little bit more of a run and start to extend the lead, here comes the Atlanta Hawks coming back and being down by 4 again, where Zachary Resachet chipped in a three-pointer, making it 132 to 128. And then before you know it, two more three-pointers by one apiece, one by Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who just really didn't want to go away, and Alex Caruso with a three-pointer of his own to really try to put the Atlanta Hawks away the best that he possibly could. But obviously, the Atlanta Hawks weren't going for it until they couldn't any longer. Case and Wallace went ahead and knocked in a three-point conversion with 2 minutes left. And then obviously the fouls started taking place and the Hawks just couldn't hit any more shots after that. So that's ultimately what became the turning point for this team. But I mean, if you watch this game, nobody could really be more proud of the way that the Atlanta Hawks had played on tonight. I mean, guys like Onyeka Okongwu did a fantastic job picking up where he kind of last left off at. 26 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 50% from the field, and 50% from three for him. That was fantastic, especially as a limited big. Not one of the more, overly athletic, not one of the taller guys, kind of, a little bit of a tweener at the front court position, maybe not a center, more of your typical four-man, if you will. Great to see him stretching defenses out with his ability to be able to shoot from long range as well. Beat Krejci chipping in with 18 points, 50% from the field, 40% from three. What a good job he's been doing as well. Very well-deserved start for him. Seventh in the NBA at 47% shooting from three. And I think that while Zachary Risachet had his 12 points, 50% from three, 50% from the field is just honestly really not enough, especially for a number one pick when guys go down. And he had this example to be able to come in and have the experience to do so on last year, where I really do believe that he is one that is going to have to be forced to grow up a little bit faster before our eyes, where he will have some games like he did last year. I think a 33-point game against the Knicks and a couple other 20-something, 30-point games. When you need him to show up big, you need him to show up big, because that's the difference when you don't have a Jalen Johnson and you don't have a Trae Young that could add a number to the left side of the result column, shock the world by beating the world champs on their floor, and then give everybody something to, kind of rave and write home to mom about, if you will. So, I think that he just has to be better in those regards, not picking up 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes of the game as a starter when all of your key contributors, your main key contributors are out. That's not going to bode well for the Atlanta Hawks. And so from that standpoint, I like to think that hopefully they could take some of this motivation, some of this inspiration, having that feel in their heart that they could play with anybody around the league after a performance like this, and take that into some very much payback mentality approaches against Toronto that's going to be coming up relatively soon. Appreciate everybody for joining us, man. Thank you so much. We're here, as you know, concluding after each and every single game. Post game, we're here with you, the Locked On Hawks postcast, immediately after every game. So appreciate you guys for joining me so much. Looking forward to doing this again with you guys here after the next game. And stick around, as my dude Brad Rowland is coming up next with the Locked On Hawks podcast. Dude knows his stuff. He knows what he's talking about. Very entertaining, very informational, and very educational. You don't want to miss out for him coming up next. Signing off, DeShaun Tate for Tanitra Batista as well, the Locked On Hawks postcast. See you guys after the next one.